We're going to get started in just a minute or two.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Roberto. I work with Resilience Orange County.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Rojas. She, her pronouns, and I work with ACLU of Southern California.
Jennifer and I are your co-hosts for today. We're really happy to be talking to you all about the Board of Supervisors and the important role that they play in all the issues that we tackle here locally. And this event really started because every election cycle, we host candidates debates. And this year, there wasn't as much enthusiasm from the candidates to speak to the public on issues that are important to the community. And we've had to pivot this event from a candidates forum to an educational forum on the issues that are important to the grassroots groups and nonprofits in the county. For today, we have community groups that are going to be speaking on issues that are important to folks, including our county budget, sheriff accountability, immigration, affordable housing, renter protections, to name a few. And I want to thank all the community partners, the volunteers and the speakers that came today, that are here in person and online, for your time and effort in wanting to make a difference here in Orange County. We are small but powerful, but we hope that you can continue to join us in the fight as we continue.
Yeah, so just like Roberto said, our hope here today is that folks will walk away with more information on the issues that matter most to Orange County residents, both before and beyond the election. So please stay in touch with us. And with that, I think we're going to get started with our first speaker, who's going to be speaking on the county budget and why that matters to Orange County residents. I'm going to pass it to Mr. Jared Knowles. Oh, thank you. So we're actually going to get started with a couple community guidelines. The first is that we encourage folks to use a one person, one mic. Meaning, one person speaking at a time. Number two, recognize and account for intent versus impact. 3, share the space, meaning step up and step back. So we want to hear from everyone and make sure everyone can participate. 4th, we want to use people-centered and people-first language, such as unhoused people, incarcerated individuals. 5, we want to use confidentiality. So we want to share learnings, but not attribute to any one person. And we want to hold the line. Do not tolerate anti-Blackness, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, racism, sexism, fat phobia, and the savior charity ideology or classism. And with that, I will hand it to Karen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Hernandez. I use she, her, ella pronouns. I'm a lead organizer with the People's Budget Orange County, and also Stop the Music Coalition, Rapid Response Network, and also Transforming Justice Orange County. Here today to introduce one of our partners, and also just talk about the county budget and spending we want to get started with. Obviously, this is a teach-in, and the Board of Supervisors do have a great authority over the budget for the County of Orange. Orange County spends an incredible amount on what is called public protection, and that encompasses the Sheriff's Department, probation, the District Attorney, trial courts, and a few other departments, including the Office of Independent Review. 84%, which is about 1.48 billion of the funds that Orange County spends on public protection, come from the county's general fund. And that's the main operating fund for the county. And the public protection accounts for about 20% of the total county appropriations. It takes up 30% of the county's general fund spending. Over 50% of the general fund net county costs goes to public protection. And that's a mouthful. I'm here to introduce Jared Knowles, who works with Civilytics, who will help us kind of, untangle the county budget, because those are a lot of words I don't think a lot of folks are familiar with. And specifically, what this has to do with the Board of Supervisors is that they oversee the county departments and programs, which they annually approve their budgets. They also appropriate and spend money, so they control the county budgets. And most of these activities are conducted during usually bi-weekly public meetings that happen here in Santa Ana as well, with certain personnel. And then legal matters are often discussed in closed session. So with that, I will introduce Jared Knowles with Civilytics.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? Great. It is an honor to be here. And I appreciate you coming out on this evening to learn more about what the Board of Supervisors does. And I'm here as a resource to help you learn about how much and how your county is spending the money. In a better world, your county Board of Supervisors would do this service for you. But I'm grateful that People's Budget of Orange County and others who have hosted this event have been able to bring me here to help make sense of this budget and explain it and answer questions for you in their absence. It's important to understand that the county Board of Supervisors are in charge of spending over $8 billion every year, and that money comes from you. This is a large organization with a lot of resources to choose how to spend them. Your county, Orange County, has organized itself into what it calls programs or activities. These activities have the names that you see on the screen. I'm not going to talk about all of them this evening. We're going to focus on the ones where the county has choices about how to spend its money. The two most important are public protection and community services. Unfortunately, in California, county budgets are very complicated. And so we have to talk about one piece of jargon that will help you understand the choices that your Board of Supervisors are making. So I will try to make this term as easy to understand as possible for you, but it is the term called net county cost. I read budgets from across the country, from cities and counties and states, and net county cost is one of the most complicated accounting procedures used in public budgeting across the country. So I'm going to make it as simplified as possible. The net county cost represents the additional money that your community has to spend for a given department after accounting for all of the money that that department raises through its other activities. The definition is provided for you on the slides, and I believe the slides have been translated. So the definition is available as a reference, but the way to think about it more simply is every department in Orange County has access to resources outside of the county, state grants, federal grants, or special appropriations. After those dollars are accounted for, the net county cost is the additional money that comes from the general purpose revenue from the community to make the full funding for that department. Another way to think about it would be that net county cost represents the sort of free and money that the Board of Supervisors can choose freely what to do with. There's no restrictions on this specific pot of money. So every dollar of net county cost that is spent is a dollar that could have been spent in a different way. And I believe it's important to think about these choices and to ask the elected officials why they made the choices that they made. So we need to understand these choices. So let's talk about these choices and the specific budget choices in Orange County. As I said, Orange County has a budget of $8.8 billion. About $4.8 billion of that is what is known as the general fund, which is roughly speaking money that could be allocated to a number of different projects in the community. The missing $4 billion is allocated to things that are required by law for the county to do or are paid for by someone else for the county to do. So the Board of Supervisors has some control over that money, but not very much. But over the $4.8 billion that remains, they do have a lot of control. Within the $4.8 billion, there's $1 billion of net county costs, which is completely flexible spending that the county can use. We were talking about this earlier today. With $1 billion, you could purchase the Anaheim Angels baseball team every year. Next slide. So every year, Board of Supervisors deliberate over the worth at least of a baseball team. And then another detail that's important is that the budget that is passed by the Board of Supervisors is revised in a series of meetings that are not necessarily well advertised to the public in a process known as augmentations. This is another barrier to having your voice heard in how your dollars are allocated. This slide demonstrates that most of this allocation, the extra augmentation budget, is allocated to the public protection function in the county. This slide also illustrates a couple other important decisions that the Board of Supervisors makes every year. You'll notice that the largest program on this slide is called Community Services, where the Board of Supervisors spends $3.3 billion. But remember I said net county cost is what reflects the money the Board of Supervisors actually controls. Most of community service spending is funded by the state and federal government. The Board of Supervisors is not choosing to invest money raised in Orange County on community services. In fact, if we look at how the Board of Supervisors allocates the net county cost, the majority of net county cost spending goes to public protection. This is an important way to illustrate the choices that are made by the Board of Supervisors when they are making their budget. We're going to look at this choice a few different ways. Next slide. This slide shows the relative spending on a chart between the public protection, community services, infrastructure, and environmental spending. The blue bars represent the total spending, but the yellow bars represent the spending decided on as net county cost. So if there was not state and federal revenue, the Board of Supervisors would not be spending very much money on community services at all. And they would be spending almost nothing on infrastructure and environmental spending. So this is an important question to ask, not how do you spend the budget, but how do you spend the money that you have control over in the county? That is flexible spending that could be spent on other things. And the answer in Orange County is mostly on public protection. Next slide. And we skip this one. Yeah. This is from the Orange County. I'm going to show some charts from the budget document itself so that you don't have to open the budget. So if we look at the total spending, that includes what I told you, all of the spending, $8.8 billion. We see public protection is only 20% of the total spending. But when we subtract out the money that the Board of Supervisors doesn't have free control over, on the next slide, we'll see how they spend their general fund, which is their flexible spending. So now we see that the two largest categories are community services and public protection. But when we go to the next slide and we look at just how the county has allocated that net county cost, now we see that public protection is the item that is getting the majority of the spending. So I started this presentation with a very boring topic, net county cost, but it's actually very important for asking the question, where are we allocating the money that we have available to do the programs we want to do in our community? So we are allocating a lot of that money to public protection. So what is the county purchasing for all of this money that it's spending on public protection? Next slide. The biggest slice of the pie. So one way to think about it, and this is a fair statement, Orange County spends an incredible amount on public protection. The total, including revenue from the state government, the federal government, and other sources, is $1.82 billion last year, which is $576 for every person who lives in the county. Let's put that into some context. Next slide, please. We can skip this one. Next slide. And we'll skip this one too. For public protection, the items that are considered public protection in the Orange County budget are as follows. The sheriff. The sheriff is the largest, almost $1 billion. Followed by probation, over $200 million. District attorney, $186 million. The public defender, trial courts, and then miscellaneous departments. I've noted here that the augmentation process, the revision of the budget has added to these departments $43 million to the sheriff and $13 million to the public defender's office. So let's go to the next slide and look a little more in depth. One contrast to think about is that how much the county spends on custody and probation. So the county spends $456 million a year on custody and probation. So that is to operate the jail and to operate the probation department. That's $144 per person in the county just on the jail and probation. The housing spending, the total housing spending for the county is only $117 per person. So just one part of the public protection budget is much larger than the total amount spent on housing by the county, by the Board of Supervisors. I want to give you another way to think about the spending on public protection. The next slide. Every employee in the sheriff's office costs the people of Orange County $204,000 a year. So that is the total cost spent on salaries and benefits for those employees divided by the number of those employees. If you think about a playground, a school, a healthcare program that you would like to run, every employee in the sheriff's department represents $204,000 that cannot be spent on that program. Let's go to the next slide. Another way to think about it is that who does the county pay to work for the county? 1 out of 5 employees for the county work for the sheriff department. Another 1,000 employees work for the probation department. In total, the employees of the county, 1 out of every 3 work for public protection. And can we skip 2 slides? Go to the next slide. Thank you. Oh, back 1. Yep. I want to contrast this with housing so that you can see the difference of the choices made and ask questions. This table shows the total spending, the general fund spending, the net county cost, and the share of net county costs for different functions in the county. You'll see that the net county cost, remember we talked about that earlier, for housing and community development in Orange County is a little over $500,000 or 18 cents per resident. The custody and probation departments are somewhere between $33 and $103 per resident of net county cost. So this represents a choice. Housing is a problem in Orange County, and so is safety. Both are problems. One of those problems, the county is spending between $33 and $103 per person, and the other problem, it is spending 18 cents per person. The Board of Supervisors, they're not here, but I imagine may say, we don't have a choice. But I want you to know that they do have a choice over the net county cost spending. It's their job to allocate it. One more slide. Yes. So if you learn thing from my presentation, which I know talking about budgets is kind of boring on a weeknight, but what sets Orange County apart is that of money that it has available to do whatever it would like with, does it allocate toward the community services program, which includes things besides housing, is funded at only $171 million of net county cost, compared to at $900 million. And infrastructure and environment is very important to all of us. That is funded at only $36 million of net county cost. So these represent the choices made that are shown in your budget. And I think I'm going to finish my slides there so we can move to the rest of the time. I'd rather have questions. Do we want to have people ask questions?
So I just want to give our demand.
Yes.
And
Oh,
then
great.
we can-
Yes. Excellent. Karen.
Yeah, just bringing it back to me. Very quickly. Can move a couple slides down to the orange. There we go. So, you know, we are having this community teach-in to show folks there is money accessible to residents. It's restricted money. And the Board of Supervisors are spending it, obviously, as Jared has shown, in ways that are putting carceral solutions first. We would like to see, as People's Budget and several other organizations that are represented here, is transparency. As Jared outlined, you know, the augmentation process is not transparent. They make, you might have seen an article in the Voice of OC where they're like defunding the police, but they're not. That's not happened at all in our county whatsoever. There hasn't even been money shifted away from them, I think, in the history of this county. So we want them to be transparent about their transactions. We also want to be involved in that process. That process is called participatory budgeting. One of the things that is really, I think, daunting sometimes for people is the budget. But I think much like you have a budget at home with your rent, you know, your groceries, you should be able to have a say in where your money is going with the county. Also, you know, regular audits of the Sheriff's Department. That department, I don't think, has received an audit. They're just given money over and over and over again without any question or, you know, feedback as to, is this money being spent in a meaningful and positive way that's impacting the community? And obviously, we also want a diversion of money that goes into community resources. You know, these other departments are not being funded, and they should be. So we absolutely want care. We want solutions of care, not carceral solutions for these social problems. And yeah, with that, I think I will, how are we doing on time? Should we go to the next, or do we have time for a couple questions? Let me see if there's questions in the chat also. All right. Oh, the audio is choppy. Is this better? I don't think there's any questions, but if folks, oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, here's
So thank you so much for this. Extremely interesting. First, actually a comment about the Board of Supervisors. Their power doesn't only relate to the discretionary budget. We saw during COVID, when we got the federal funds, how they basically squandered $500 million, which is coming from the federal government. So that's not even the community raised. This money was sent to us to help us. And I think half of it or more, if we can, went to public protection. Our board of supervisors paid more money, with more COVID money from CARES Act to public protection than to healthcare. So that's, my question is about the net county cost. Is there like a serious added value to using that method? Or just the added value that it's really complicated and not many people can understand it?
Yeah, so what is the purpose? Yeah, I was going to just repeat the question. Yes. Yeah, so the question was, is there an added value to using the more complicated net county cost accounting process, or is it done to be difficult? My answer would be that I think it is valuable in California because the state funds so much of the operations of the county. So I think it's very useful to talk and think about net county costs as truly a local choice about local dollars. And we just all have to learn to use that lingo and talk about those dollars, because that helps us separate out the question of we have to do things that we're paid by the state or federal government to do. Net county cost represents the extra that they would like to do on top of their obligations to the state and federal government. Great question.
Maybe some other questions.
There's a question in the chat. How is Orange County differ in its choices from other counties? Orange County is very similar to other counties in California and across the country. We have a belief that our counties don't have a lot of money and that they have limited resources to support us. But that belief is not backed up by the dollars in the budget, which show that there is a lot of money in the budget. But it's just taken up by certain activities, and we should have an honest discussion about whether those are the right activities. So this is a conversation that has to happen across the country in most counties and most cities. And I can't answer Denise's question because I don't know the answer to that, but how would we learn what portion of the 204,000 is going to a sheriff employee is slated to go to their sheriff union in a given year? The answer is we would have to look at a separate document which affects the budget but is not included in the budget. That document is the contract between the county and its employee unions. I'm not sure Karen can correct me, but I believe in Orange County, like many places, this contract is negotiated in private, behind closed doors, the session that's not open to the public. But since I've shown you that 1 in 3 employees works in the public protection area, the outcome of that negotiation strongly impacts the budget and sets a boundary on what can be done. So this is to the point about transparency and how the process in Orange County has a lot of room to become more transparent, and that's true across the country as well.
So now I think we'll shift to focus on tenants' rights.
I'm sorry, with Ray, I don't know where you're at. Were you talking about law support enforcement accountability?
We were talking about the budget, the spending. Yep, no problem.
We're gonna get to that.
We are.
I got them all.
You ready, huh?
Oh, sure.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gerardo. I'm here with Resilience Orange County, and along with the coalition of other organizations that are trying to share some information on what the role of the Board of Supervisors is here in the county. Can we go to the next slide, please? Sorry. Okay, cool. So this section, we're going to be talking about tenants' rights and basically how the Board of Supervisors can impact tenants' rights, tenants' protections here in the county. Oh, next slide, please. So what is the issue at hand? Basically, rent is too damn high. This is a problem that is affecting the country as a whole, but it's very prominent here in Orange County, as Orange County is one of the most expensive counties in the entire country, and wages haven't kept up with that cost of living. The average cost of a home here in the county is over $1 million already, and these high costs of homes impacts cost of rent as well. And families have been priced out of their communities, limiting their opportunities to build generational wealth through home ownership. And then, of course, what we mentioned earlier, tenants' rights are under attack. So there's a lot of tenants' protections here in the state of California, but that doesn't mean they exist forever. They're constantly being threatened, and we're constantly fighting back to expand those rights as well. Oh, next slide, please. So the recommendation is, what do we want to see? We would like to see the Board of Supervisors offer rights of counsel for tenants going through eviction court. Guaranteeing legal representation for renters facing eviction court doesn't just keep renters in their homes, but also benefits entire communities by preventing homelessness and preserving affordable rental homes. Aside from right to counsel, another recommendation we have for the board is to allocate more funds to secure affordable low-income housing on county-owned land. The future it's for folks looking for housing. Next slide, please. So this is the portion where we were going to allow for questions, but I think we can open up for questions a little bit after. There's a short video that we want to share from some of the residents out in the city of Costa Mesa who have been organizing around tenants' rights issues in the city.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Carmen Ramírez. Vivo en la ciudad de Costa Mesa por más de 30 años. La mitad de esos años pagué renta en los apartamentos. Y ahora, gracias a Dios, pudimos comprar una casa en el Distrito 2, pero aún así sigo involucrada dentro de mi comunidad todos estos años para ayudar a mis vecinos. Trato de estar siempre involucrada en la comunidad, tanto en las escuelas, en el distrito por más de 20 años, en la iglesia también por más de 22 años. Y ahora estamos en un grupo también, Costa Mesa Unidos, Comadres Unidas, que desde enero nos empezamos a juntar tocando puertas. Ahora con esta economía que todo está caro, ahora los padres de familia, las familias no pueden pagar un departamento porque la renta está muy cara. Aún así trabajando 2 trabajos, aún así trabajando mamá y papá, es demasiado dinero para pagar un departamento de 2 recámaras por $3,600 en esta área de Costa Mesa. Y ellos, los inquilinos, están muy preocupados de que a veces se tienen que moverse, salirse de Costa Mesa cuando aquí sus hijos nacieron y tienen que buscar otros recursos, otras ciudades donde puedan pagar. Como respuestas también se está hablando de construir nuevas viviendas accesibles, pero se han preguntado los que tienen el poder para quién son accesibles esas viviendas si nuestra comunidad no tiene suficiente dinero para pagar cuál más bajo de lo que están ellos diciendo que van a pagar. ¿Cuál sería una cantidad exacta para que nuestra gente pudiera pagar un departamento como familia y no estar amontonados hasta 4 familias juntos porque no alcanzan a pagar el costo de la renta? Yo, Carmen Ramírez, como residente de Costa Mesa y miembro de diferentes grupos comunitarios aquí en la ciudad de Costa Mesa, pedimos a la mesa supervisora del condado que manejen el presupuesto con las comunidades más necesitadas en mente. Muchas gracias por su atención. Bonita tarde.
But I'm just going to share a little bit about what Carmen, the resident from Costa Mesa, was sharing. But basically, she was sharing how herself, along with some of her neighbors, have been organizing together to expand renter protections in Costa Mesa. They've been working since the beginning of the year to expand the rental assistance program in the city of Costa Mesa, and are currently working to organize a Know Your Rights workshop to help inform their neighbors on some of the rights that they have as tenants in the city of Costa Mesa. And her ask for the County Board of Supervisors was just, she had a question as to who exactly is benefiting from affordable housing. Because a lot of times when we're talking about housing insecurity, specifically here in OC, the conversation tends to lead towards developing affordable, quote unquote, affordable housing. But Carmen poses that question as to who exactly are these houses affordable for? And she's asking the Board of Supervisors to keep in mind the folks who are most in need across the county when they're going through and creating the budget for next year. Thank you all. And I think that's it for tenants' rights.
And so we're going to pass it now to Eve Garrow. Welcome, Eve.
Hi there. Hi, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. They can hear me. Thank you. So, hi there. I'm Eve. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a policy analyst at the ACLU of Southern California and a volunteer with Housing is a Human Right Orange County, here to talk about houselessness with some of the other volunteers with HHROC. So as has already been mentioned in the previous presentation, Orange County is one of the most expensive places to live in the nation. Not only is real estate or homes, that the average price of homes over $1 million a year, but it actually takes an income of at least $70,000 to afford a 1-bedroom apartment in Orange County. So indeed, housing and rent is just too damn high. So what happens to people who can't afford housing and rent? Well, wait lists for subsidized affordable housing, which people would actually be able to afford, are years and sometimes decades long. So if you can't afford rent, you run the risk of becoming displaced. And we know that a lot of people are also doubled and tripled up, living with their parents, can't move out. It's a real crisis. I mean, part of this crisis is houselessness. So from 2015 to 2021, houselessness in Orange County increased by over 50%. It has been going up, not down, while unsheltered houselessness has increased by 80%. That's people living in places not fit for human habitation, like tents in their cars, and so forth. Chronic houselessness, that is long-term houselessness among people with disabilities. Some of our most vulnerable community members and neighbors has increased by an astonishing 383% since 2015. That is almost a 400% increase. Since January of 2018, so from January of 2018 to September of 2022, approximately 1,400 people, that includes infants, children, people with disabilities, older adults, LGBTQ people, and others, have died while trying to survive out on the streets of Orange County. So this is really a life and death situation. Can we have the next slide? One more. Somehow it's, okay, thank you. So what does this have to do with the Board of Supervisors? Well, as has already been explained so well, the Board of Supervisors has the power of the purse. Their budget, they have control over that almost $1 billion discretionary budget, the net county costs that has been explained, and that they set priorities for. But so far, as I mean, it has already been demonstrated really well, I think, in this presentation, they have invested almost zero in permanent subsidized affordable housing. Now, they could be investing in that because they do control this discretionary budget. But instead, they've been building mass shelters, and as already has been described, over 50% or about 50% of that discretionary budget goes to social control, so law enforcement in jails and things like that. And let me tell you, it goes to the bells and whistles. So this is extra money that gets showered on our, our apparatus of social control in Orange County. The Board of Supervisors not only has control over the budget, though, they also have the power to put a bond measure on the ballot and let the people decide then whether to vote for to invest in subsidized affordable housing. And that would be housing first. They also have the power to pass a tax measure, to put tax measures on the ballot too. Now, what happens when they don't? So we have really been pushing and urging the Board of Supervisors to put a bond measure on the ballot to fund things like permanent subsidized affordable housing for years, and they've been, unresponsive to those requests. So what is the only alternative for community groups? The signature to put something on the ballot, the signature gathering process, and that costs about $1 million to gather those signatures. So we would much rather have a Board of Supervisors that has the political will just to vote, to put a bond or a tax measure on the ballot and let the people decide. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to turn it over now to Dave Duran, another member of Housing as a Human Right Orange County, to talk a little bit more about the way that the Board of Supervisors allocates resources.
Thank you, Eve. Hi, everyone. Dave Duran, pronouns he, him. And I'm hoping everyone has had a chance to maybe take blood pressure medicine tonight, or, take a couple of big deep breaths, because it's really important that we take advantage of this information and share it with others. After all, Orange County is our home, and none of us appreciates when our home is not a safe place. We don't appreciate when our home is not recognized as valuable. So that being said, I know this slide will reiterate a little bit of what you've already heard, but I'd like to repeat it because it's really important. Over 1,400 people have died while trying to live on the streets of this county. We know that historically, since around 2005, there has been at least over half a dozen reports from the Orange County Grand Jury recognizing that Orange County Board of Supervisors, and to be fair, other cities, have neglected to do their job in regards to homelessness and helping to save lives of the people who are living on the streets. That's not something we did. That's again, Orange County Grand Jury came to that conclusion. We're just sharing that information with you. They've also recognized that the Board of Supervisors has failed to do the right thing when it comes to providing health care, mental health care for people. We know that mental health is just as important as physical health. If you break a leg, you need help. If your mental health isn't or needs some care, there should be a place for it. This county doesn't seem to recognize that. Instead, this county's idea of providing mental health is to send a sheriff out to arrest somebody and put them in jail. And we, the taxpayers, pay for this kind of care. That's criminal in itself. So if we look at this slide, we can see, again, we've talked about over $1 billion, almost $2 billion goes to social control or law enforcement. And you look at the other half of the slide and we see 58 million or 7 million for healthcare. There's a huge imbalance. And yet it's the same taxpayer that goes to pay for this. So how is it that is allowed? One of the reasons it's allowed is because we, the people, allow it. We, the people, need to do a better job of seeing who we elect. We need to do a better job of using our voice at the Board of Supervisor meetings, at City Council meetings. Otherwise, they're going to continue this. And we're trying to stop it, obviously, because people are dying. Next slide, please. So here's partially what we want to see. It's real simple. In order to end the issue of people dying on the streets unhoused, what a concept. The county needs to help develop housing to put people in. Affordable housing, housing that people can qualify in what's called Section 8 housing. Nonetheless, they need to be in housing, not shelters. We put animals in shelters. We don't put people in shelters. We help people stay alive. We help them. If they're sick, we take them to the doctor, to the hospital. Okay? But none of that's available. So we want to stop investing in shelters and start investing in housing, not social control, not more law enforcement. We want the Board of Supervisors to use their power to create meaningful investments in affordable housing to eventually end homelessness. That's not unrealistic. We're very fortunate here in Orange County. Different from LA is, yes, we have thousands of people who are unhoused. LA has tens of thousands of people. Orange County can do this if we had leaders that had the will to do it. But again, I defer to the Orange County Board of Orange County Grand Jury, who keeps reporting that they don't. That's their finding. Again, that's not ours. So how are we going to change this? That's really the question we have to ask ourselves. We want a community in which a safe, affordable home is a right. Housing is a human right, not a privilege, reserved for those who can afford skyrocketing market rates, housing prices. In 1948, and I'm not here to give people a history lesson, but I think this is really important to know. In 1948, the United Nations Declaration of Rights recognized that housing was a human right. It recognized healthcare as a human right. It recognized education as a human right. It recognized childcare as a human right. The United States, in its infinite stupidity, decided not to adopt this. Other countries have. So many other countries around the world do not have the unhoused issues we have because they adopted that declaration. And so they started doing a better job of trying to help their citizens. In Orange County and in this nation, to be fair, we have not done it. But that doesn't mean that we can't. That doesn't mean that we can't start now. So next slide, please. So the question I would that we pose is, what do you think? Do you commit to dramatically increasing county investments to discretionary budget dollars in permanent affordable subsidized housing to end homelessness? I would hope that the answer from each and every one of you would be yes, that we need our taxpayer dollars to help save lives by forcing the Board of Supervisors to do a better job of creating housing. Instead of giving those millions to law enforcement, instead of giving, you know, I remember a year or two ago, they spent, you know, almost $40 million to open an animal shelter. And I get it, that maybe we needed an animal shelter, but that wasn't matched with helping human beings, helping other people survive. That same year, they spent over $100 million to beautify the harbor. Where's that $100+ million to end homelessness? You know, so one of the questions we ask, and hopefully this is will get you thinking about how we're going to fix this, is what's missing in this picture. We know we have law enforcement. Okay, great. We have roads, we have transportation, we have, you know, nice green trees here and there. We're lucky enough to have, you know, a beach and things of that sort. But what's missing? Well, it's evident once we leave this building and start to drive away. It's evident that human beings are unhoused. We can see with our own eyes what's missing. We can see with our own eyes the lack of care that this county has for its residents.
Well, thank you so
So
much.
it's not a big mystery. So what we're, you know, again, what we're asking is the millions and the tens of millions and the hundreds of millions and the billion that is being spent, it needs to be cut. And some of that money needs to go to the residents. Just because you might sleep on a sidewalk, that doesn't mean that you're lesser of a resident. That doesn't mean that, you know, that you're not a human being. We need this county to do better. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I would like to turn it over to a couple of HHROC panelists with lived expertise in houselessness to talk for a couple of minutes about, you know, the human cost of the Board of Supervisors' political decision to overinvest in our apparatus of social control and to underinvest and not invest at all in things that we need to end houselessness. Could we unmute Nadia and Bia?
I'm not sure if they're here.
I saw Bia. Bia, can you unmute yourself? There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Eve. I would like to offer just a brief example of the human suffering as a result of being unhoused. I, for the first time ever, became unhoused in May of this year with a degenerative musculoskeletal condition that was managed while I was housed. Within the first 3 months of being unhoused, my condition declined very rapidly. It was not managed. It resulted in intermittent paralysis. I was averaging ER visits every 2 weeks. in order to try to control the symptoms, which were not controlled. It did result in permanent, irreversible damage to my health. All preventable if there were options for housing for me. Not to mention the cost of 8 ER visits, 5 ambulance rides within a 3.5-month period to the county. So that's just one example of suffering.
Thank you so much for sharing, Bia. It's such a powerful story, and it really speaks to the idea, which is supported by your own personal experience and also by all of the research, which is that housing is a form of healthcare, and houselessness is it's dangerous. It's a danger to public health. It's a danger to individual health, and we simply cannot have a community that is thriving and that is healthy and vibrant when people can't afford their housing and when they become, so many of us become displaced from our housing. So thank you for sharing that. Nadia, I see that you're here and you're unmuted. Did you want to share a few thoughts about the cost of the Board of Supervisors decisions not to invest in housing?
Yes, Eve. Again, I'm Nadia. I'm an unhoused lady that luckily I'm with housing right now. But as many of you already said, many people do not have it. I would like the Board of Supervisors to understand how traumatic it is when you lose your home. And people can lose your home. Anybody can happen to anybody for many different reasons. It happened to me because the tragical death of my husband. In fact, I used to do real estate. I used to sell houses. I used to sell new homes for people. You know, it was devastating when you have to go in such a depressive time of losing your husband in such a way, and then not being able to afford your home, and not being able to fight and not being able to have any legal assistance when the lender can eat you alive and terrify you until you basically going to be evicted. You know, I was calling many places. Where am I going to be? I have never been in that situation. And would you believe it? There were not enough shelters. They kept telling me I have to wait 3-4 months. I mean, it was completely traumatizing. I never been in that situation. Just the idea that I'm going to be on the street or in a car exposed to the worst scenarios, to a lot of dangers. So I want the Board of Supervisors to allocate more money. So when the problem becomes, when a person becomes very close to losing a home, to becoming unhoused, homeless, there will be solutions. So not the worst will happen. Now with the people fear the police or the sheriff to go and throw them on the street. You know, they need to be aware it can happen to the board of directors. I'm sure they know many people that have gone through this. I'm sure they have families, friends, and they're not even exempt because things happening. I'm hoping that this will never happen. I'm hoping that nobody will be unhoused, because I believe, like many do, that being unhoused is a violation of human rights. No one deserves that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadia, and thanks to everybody for listening and supporting our panelists. I mean, I'll just end by saying these political decisions are really a form of structural violence, because houselessness just rains violence down upon people. So yes, it's very important to pay attention to the decisions that the board is making and to vote for your, Board of Supervisor candidate in in an educated and knowledgeable way. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Eve. I think we may have one question. from the audience and online, and then we may also have a question in person. So let's see if the person online would like to ask their question. Okay, no problem. Let's turn now to the question in person.
My name is Bernadette. I am a recipient of AHRI housing, and I'm also in the process of trying to get legal assistance. I'm also a victim of domestic violence. My children were abducted July of 2021 in LA County. I've been dealing with that. I'm also diagnosed with bipolar 1 since the age of 12 and borderline personality disorder since the age of 30. I've done extensive treatment for my mental health. I'm an advocate with the LGBTQ. I'm in the middle of crisis right now with the abduction of my children. And it's just been very difficult. June of 2015 is my get well date to live. I was highly suicidal. If I didn't have as much treatment and recovery right now, I would have taken my own life probably in August of 21. I spoke at the Board of Supervisors meeting a couple of Tuesdays ago. I spoke at Garden Grove City Council. My landlord, the second day I moved in, I was so excited. I was on the streets, staying in bathrooms. I'm a full-time law student right now. I'm trying to overcome these, but I need help from my community. I honestly believe that law enforcement, they need to be accountable for getting into that, but it also goes hand in hand between civil and a criminal matter. When landlords abuse you, harass you, and threaten you, the Board of Supervisors needs to enforce that housing issue. Who knows how many other issues and situations are similar to mine? The second day I moved in, I have an emotional support animal, my cat. Her name is Wacko. She's calico, she's long hair, one green eye, one blue eye. She's my world. And the landlord's wife came up pounding on my back door. Again, keep in mind, I'm so grateful. I'm so just, I have my own apartment, like, oh my God. And it all blew up in my face. The second day I moved in, the landlord, his wife comes up pounding on my back door at 3 a.m. telling me what's wrong. My cat woke them up. I was just like, are you kidding me right now? Like, what? The next day I sent my landlord an email explaining my situation, my mental health condition, my children. Every month, I'll cut, long story short, I've had a 3-day pay or quit. Pathways of Hope pays my full rent. There's a first question mark, like what? Secondary, he's had 2 of my vehicles towed. The vehicle is parked in front of my garage, towed, gone. That's money I had to borrow from my grandmother. He towed my BMW that I just got and lost. Law enforcement lied. He took away my garage. He gave me a notice. Said, get your stuff out. I can't have the garage anymore. Says who? Go to court. There's no court order. No. I don't know. And I got the BMW. The irony of it is with my rental relief check, because I've been threatened so many times. He hasn't filed an unlawful detainer. That's a threat, clearly. 8 of them. The rent's paid. Why haven't you filed then? Why are you just putting me these notices to scare me? No, that's just going to make me stronger and fight harder, because it's not right. That I was so happy and grateful. And he has made my life, my bipolar, my borderline. I'm trying so hard to stay focused so I can be credible and effective, but it's extremely difficult with all this other stuff. And I sent a email to Senator Alex Padilla, the U.S. Housing Authority Director. I CC'd them. It was to my landlord, but it was, I'm saying it was very effective. And what I wrote to address the Board of Supervisors, I could share. Probably don't have that much time now. I don't want to take up all this, but there's some really deep details in here that I've been going through this last year, and I have a lot of suggestions because I'm going through it
Currently, I'm educated. I want to help people, and everybody makes mistakes. I get that. You know what? They just need to make it right. We get it. You know what? Whatever happened, who cares? Just make it right now. And if we have those answers, why not? Then there's a problem, you know? And I've fallen a lot of times, but I always get up and I try to learn from it. Like, what does God want me to know? What this struggle is so difficult. I don't have my children, my son. His dad was shot in the head due to gun violence, rival violence in LA County. My son's dressing like a gang member. That in itself, not being able to have to get an attorney. Legal aid reform now, that needs to happen. Legal aid is a joke. They give you nothing but information. I can get that on the internet, love. You're a licensed attorney. No, I need you to put a pretty little bow on my problem and give it to the judge. That's it. Just present my case. Go in there and fight for me because I can't do it. So I think that has a lot to do with representation, with what I'm going through, and the fact that making civil and criminal that barrier mesh when it comes to landlord abuse, and just make it defined. That way it'll pay a lot more, provide more money for the residents. It'll make the landlords and management companies get on their P's and Q's. And I think it would make a huge dent in the homelessness, because I'm about to be evicted. And for what, I don't know. That's the crazy part.
You're tying together so many issues, from meeting housing, meeting renters' rights, meeting tenant protection.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. That was very powerful, and you're weaving all of the themes together with us. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you
Absolutely.
as well. I mean, it's that kind of expertise that needs to
Absolutely. We should absolutely
lead our movement.
Because we want to refer you, we can't hear that, what you're going through, and then just say goodbye.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not leaving. Thank you.
So we're gonna get into another deep subject, and very related to what we've been talking about this evening, which is sheriff accountability and violence. And so, to some of the themes that Dave was bringing up earlier around what, for people here and for people in the audience, what makes us safe? It's all the things that Dave was mentioning that we were just discussing here: the right to housing, the right to live free of harassment, mental health care, access to good paying jobs. These are all the things that actually make us safe. And so when it comes to sheriff violence, we have to recognize that for many communities of color, Black, Brown folks in our county, the sheriff's department does not equate to public safety. And so, I just want to open us up briefly to talk about the issue of sheriff violence within the patrol division of the sheriff's department. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So Kurt Reinhold, how many folks here and in the audience can say Kurt Reinhold's name with me? Kurt Reinhold.
Kurt Reinhold.
Kurt Reinhold, for folks who may not know, he was murdered by the Orange County Sheriff's Department last September, in September 2020. Kurt Reinhold, he was 42 years old. He was a husband. He was a father of two. He was a youth soccer coach. And at the time that he was murdered, he was experiencing houselessness in San Clemente. And when he was killed, he was, the media likes to say that he was jaywalking. He was crossing a small intersection during a red light, basically a red hand, when two homeless liaison deputies stopped him. And within a matter of minutes, he was killed by those two sheriff's deputies. It's important to know that the two deputies that killed Kurt Reinhold had been trained in crisis intervention. They had been trained in de-escalation. They had been trained in how to support people experiencing homelessness. And yet, with all that training, these deputies escalated the situation. within a matter of minutes and ended up taking Kurt Reinhold's life. And this is someone who is now missing from his family, from his children's lives. And I think, this was at a time during the 2020 uprisings for racial justice, for police accountability. And so we saw lots of movement in Orange County. And so, I think as we continue to talk about, the role of the Board of Supervisors, there's also a role, the supervisors have a responsibility and a role to make sure that everyone feels safe. Unhoused people, people of color, and especially when it comes to the Sheriff's Department. And so, I think now I'll turn it over to Karen to continue this conversation.
So, in going with, the topic of sheriff accountability and violence, I would like to introduce my good friend, an organizer who has formerly been incarcerated, recently released. Very excited to introduce him, Jose Armendariz.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Armendariz. You guys heard I'm formerly incarcerated. Spent 16 years behind bars for a crime that I did not commit. I was found innocent, released after 16 years. I was 16 years old when I went into jail. 11 of those years were spent under Orange County Sheriff's Department jurisdiction. I was there for 3 different administrations. The corrupt Mike Corona administration, the corrupt Sandra Hutchins administration, just never got caught, and the corrupt Don Barnes administration. I don't think many of you need to be convinced about, the fact that the Orange County Sheriff's Department doesn't care about you, doesn't care about us, doesn't care about anybody. Care about themselves. They care about protecting the status quo and covering their shit up. If you look up the Orange County Sheriff's Department online, you'll see scandal after scandal, from deputies raping, from deputies using their power to abuse incarcerated people, deputies killing. What we heard right now about Kurt Reinhold, that's one incident of many. We think of jails and prisons as a violent place. They make it violent. They encourage violence. They are the ones that incite the violence. So, having been through this, experiencing, ever since 2009, whenever I experienced an incident with the Orange County Sheriff's Department that I felt was wrong, I felt, like what they did to me was horrible, I would react the same way they would react with me, with violence. When they approach me and they hit me and everything, I would respond with the same amount of violence. Still a young kid, still trying to adjust to the system. It took a while for me to realize this is what they want. They want me to respond with violence because they actually enjoy beating on me, jumping me, 20 deputies, jumping one person. 4 different incidents. I got scars all over from beatings that I received in the jail from the Orange County Sheriff's deputies. Every time I'm bloodied up, I'm sitting in front of a nurse's station and they're checking on me. They're laughing, talking about how good they hit me, how great it was to beat on me. This is the Orange County Sheriff's Department that many people think protect their community. Don't care about anybody but themselves. Immediately, what they start doing is falsifying reports. They falsify reports saying that the incident was created by me. When we request surveillance from inside the jail, no surveillance. This is what the Orange County Sheriff's Department does. People who are houseless and end up behind bars, people who suffer from mental health problems, they're in the jail sleeping in urine, feces. This is something that I personally witnessed, that I personally saw, that I would personally approach deputies and ask them, can you please do something for this person? They need help. They're not in the right mental capacity to help themselves. Help them. If you're going to keep them in your custody, help them. You care so much about them, why don't you help them? I'm limited in my capacity to help them. I'm incarcerated. I'm inside a cell almost 24 hours a day. There's nothing I can do for them other than offer moral support. And whatever I have, if they're hungry, you know. So right now, like I said, I don't think many of you need to be convinced about this. Many of you know this kind of stuff. Many of you agree that the Orange County Sheriff's Department is not on your side. So right now, what we're doing, I think, from everything you've heard, we're really here to create leaders. We need you guys to be leaders. We need you guys to stand up and say, enough is enough. Seen those LA council meetings recently? Packed. There shouldn't be empty seats right here today.
That's right.
The community should be here, should be enraged, you know, and push back. You know, I have a reason to be upset because of everything I went through, but you guys have a reason to be upset too. It's your money they're spending to commit crimes. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. Just type up Orange County Sheriff's Department scandals in the last 15 years. You're gonna get a whole list of them. How many of these deputies or cops have gone to jail? None. How many of these officers are held accountable? None. One deputy was raping while on duty, was still working, and raped again. This deputy was still on the force after being accused of this. Anybody else would have been thrown in jail immediately, right? And then that's another thing about the jail is, what is the jail doing to help people get better? What programs do they have? What are they offering to the people behind bars? You know, people make mistakes. They end up in jail, and what does jail do? What does prison do? Is prison preparing people for release to reintegrate into society? I was released without even being able to make a phone call to my family. No clothes. My sister had to call the sheriff's office demanding to allow her to bring me clothes so that I wouldn't be released in a paper jumpsuit, in a see-through paper jumpsuit. They show lists of all these resources that they offer to people, all these places where you can go get help. Nobody helped me. My family helped me. My friends helped me. So what are they doing with all this money? They say they have educational services. You look in their website, they're going to show you like a list of all the services they offer to incarcerated people. I'm going to tell you right now, that's bullshit. They're not offering none of that. So, you know, you guys are here because you care. You guys are here because you understand that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. And it's time to feel that righteous anger, that righteous rage. Get a hold of that. Invite your family members, invite your friends, invite your neighbor. These meetings are important. And when it's time to go face the Board of Supervisors, we hold them accountable. People with 6 figures jobs, like,
Right.
don't give a shit about us. And when we're not present, they don't give a shit even more.
Right. They don't have that.
You know, we need to show up. We need to speak up. We need to hold them accountable. I think that's the most important part. You know, is understanding the problem, facing it, addressing it, and demanding change. Thank you, guys.
I want to just also very quickly give huge thanks to Jose, because while he was incarcerated, there was a very big issue in the jail where folks were only being fed cold sack lunch meals. They were often rotting bologna sandwiches. He led the effort with a lot of our local organizations here to change that, to reinstate hot meals. Because of the work that he did, the Board of Supervisors showed up to inspect the jail kitchens. Granted, they were tipped off, so they were super clean and sparkly when they showed up, but they were able to get hot meals reinstated. So that's what action looks like as well. And we can go to the next slide, please. We can skip this as well and just go to the next slide. So we did sort of touch on this that Jose mentioned. You know, these are the scandals. I only picked a few from a few different years, but as you can see here, there's, you know, an incarcerated person got $500,000 for a work assignment injury. A pregnant woman lost her baby after jail staff stopped at a Starbucks en route to the hospital. She lost her baby. Just from this year, 2022, almost $2 million in settlements. This is our money. This is taxpayer money that's going to pay for the violence. No accountability. Next slide, please. For 2021, again, these are just 5 settlements. Almost $5 million, y'all. 4.5 million. 2019, 1.4 million for 2 cases. One of them I just really want to highlight because it's so egregious that a former jail nurse was prevented from treating an incarcerated person. That is the violence that is occurring in the Orange County jail system. And I will hand it over to Darlene.
They don't know who I am. Hi, my name is Darlene Petrell. I'm with the National Action Network Orange County chapter. And well, I was listening to your story. I was getting really pissed off. I was like, by the time you finished, I was like this. So we want to talk about solutions, what we want to see, because it's one thing for us to talk about the problems, or what are the solutions, and what you did by bringing light to the situation with food, that's a solution. So we want to talk about our solutions, and because protest is cool, but we need policy changes. So what we want to see is what we think would be a solution, because it's worked in other places, is we need civilian-led crisis response programs to respond to calls related to houselessness and mental health crisis as an alternative. 1 in 4, sorry about that. 1 in 4 people killed by law enforcement are experiencing mental illness. Removing law enforcement from these calls is the difference between that person having a mental crisis, leaving with a social worker and getting the necessary treatment, versus leaving in a body bag. Bottom line, it's a matter of life and death. Many communities around the US have launched programs to send civilian first responders to calls for a mental health crisis. There are several different models of civilian-led crisis response programs. Some community-based organizations like the Anti-Police Terror Project have launched mental health first in Oakland. Some cities have launched municipal programs like Huntington Beach's, that probably was wrong, but Be Well program. Dispatching trained volunteers, healthcare workers, and social workers to provide care to people in crisis is one intervention for sheriff violence. These civilian-led crisis response are the result of community members, nonprofits, and county agencies joining forces. Perhaps you, as a member of the community, you may have ideas on how to develop and implement a crisis response program here in Orange County. If so, I want to encourage you to go for it and be the change you want to see. Remember, it's a matter of life and death. Thank you.
And now we will shift to our last set of speakers to speak on the issue of immigrant rights. And so I'm going to welcome Roberto and Luis.
And Laura.
And Laura.
Got it, okay.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the partners that have helped put this together. And thank you for those who are joining us online. And this is powerful, y'all. Thank you for everybody who has presented as well. My name is Luis Gomez, and I am with the LGBTQ Center of Orange County. I use he, him pronouns, and I am joined today by...
Hola todos, or hi everyone, my name is Roberto. I'm with Resilience Orange County.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura Hernandez and I'm with Orange County Rapid Response Network.
Thank you so much. And today we are going to be discussing the issue of immigrant rights. And I think the previous presentation was a perfect segue to do this because the Orange County Board of Supervisors and the Orange County Sheriff's Department is involved in the active deportation of their constituents and residents of Orange County. I don't want to take too much time because we also have a speaker and I want to give enough time for the speaker to present. But essentially, the main message here is that Orange County is the deportation capital of California. For 3 years in a row, Orange County has transferred the most people to ICE for deportation. And an example of this is in the year of the pandemic. In the year of the pandemic, 2020, the Orange County Sheriff's Department accounted for close to 40% of all transfers in the state of California. I'll pass it on to Roberto to explain a little bit more about that.
Here is a picture. The dark blue square represents the transfers for Orange County. All the boxes are all the transfers of all the counties across the state. So you can see this is close to 40% of all the transfers. This is for 2020. Next slide. Luis and I, we were able to look at the data. Here you can look at the transfer rates beginning in 2019, 2020, and we just found out 2021 data. Since 2019, transfers across the state have decreased every year since 2019, 2020, and 2021. But Orange County has taken up a larger share of all those deportations every year. So in 2019, you can see that 29%, Orange County accounted for 29% of all transfers. If you look at 2020, it jumped to 38%. The latest data shows that right now for 2021, 36% of all transfers in the state came from Orange County. So that's why when Luis talks about that we are the deportation capital, we make up the most transfers in the state of California, our county, our sheriff's department. Trash ass Don Barnes. And our board of supervisors who allow him to do that. Next slide. You might be asking, who are the people that are being transferred and what crimes, right, are they being transferred for? In 2020, 51% of all transfers accounted for these top 4 groupings of penal codes. The largest share, 61 people, were transferred in 2020 for burglary, robbery, or grand theft. So the second largest group, 21, were transferred for assault with a deadly weapon. 17 were transferred for transporting, selling, or possessing meth. And then 12 were transferred for domestic violence. We can move on to the next slide. In 2021, 63% of all transfers from Orange County were grouped into these 2 penal codes. 35 were transferred for burglary, robbery, or grand theft. And 11 were transferred for assault with a deadly weapon. There is a further analysis that can go into what these charge codes mean. But it's very easy for folks to be convicted of these, right? You can go to the next slide.
Thank you. And so what does this have to do with the Orange County Board of Supervisors? Well, it's all connected, right? Because the Orange County Board of Supervisors funds the Orange County Sheriff's Department. And in doing so, and they are complicit in actively deporting Orange County residents. They're all the people that they are supposed to represent, right? Like some of us. And they continue to fund the actions of the Orange County Sheriff's Department, including the unlawful actions, right, that we have heard about. And they don't have much accountability for this, both the Board of Supervisors and the Sheriff's Department. Now, the Board of Supervisors have not been held accountable or have hosted Truth Act forums in the spirit of the law. Now, the Truth Act is a law in California that requires the county to host accessible, public, and well-organized forums that, number one, clearly communicate to the community the details of the Sheriff's Department's practices in collaboration with ICE, and number two, that allows Orange County residents to share questions and concerns publicly about such practices by the Sheriff's Department. Now, this has not been followed in the true spirit of the law. That's why we call them sham Truth Act forums. Lastly, while they have the power to do so, they have not passed any meaningful policy to limit or end the transfers from the Orange County Sheriff's Department to ICE.
They have that power. The Board of Supervisors have the power to end or limit transfers in Orange County. And they have failed. So what do we want to see? We want to see the sheriff's department end all transfers, flat out. Like we're not going to compromise on, you know, this conviction or that conviction. Everyone deserves to be free. And we also, it costs money to transfer and deport community members over to ICE. So we're saying that we need to end that funding to end all transfers. No more money for transfers. And instead, we should be funding the wellness and the true safety of the immigrant community here in Orange County. And that has to do with mental health, housing, food insecurity that folks are facing, right? Oversight over our police. All of that is money that should be invested. So to close for our immigration, before we hand it off to Laura, right? What we're asking for is no transfers, end all transfers. Our next slide. So we'd like to introduce Laura. Laura is an amazing community leader. She's currently the coordinator of the Orange County Rapid Response Network. And Laura, just some of the questions that we have for you is that, like, how do you see this issue impacting you, impacting the immigrant community, or generally, how does immigration impact Orange County residents?
Thank you for being here today and for giving me the opportunity to share with y'all a little bit about how this has affected our community. So I'm directly affected. I just got out 2 years ago. And I was held 10 days past my release date in the Orange County jail because they wanted ICE to come and get me. I just want to be clear. I think it was 2018, SB 54.
It was went into effect, SB 54 went into effect 2020.
2020, we had a bill go into effect, SB 54, that said that county jails, prisons cannot work with ICE to hand people over to them. In the past, if you were an immigrant, whether you were undocumented or had status of any kind, once you completed your sentence, they would hold you up to 30 days past your release date, waiting for ICE to come and pick you up. That's no more. It is illegal for them to hold you anytime past your release date. But they have found a loophole. So because they can't hold you past your release date, how they're colluding, and we have a community member right now that is set to be released tomorrow, and they're a great example of this. So what they're doing is ICE is now calling and saying, we want to pick them up before their release date. So they can pick them up to 72 hours before their release date. And this is what happened to our community member. They were set to be released on Friday. ICE called the prison and said, we're going to pick them up on Wednesday, 3 days before or 2 days before they're supposed to be released, right? So all they told them is, oh, your release date changed. Now you're going to be released on Wednesday. So they called their family, hey, I'm getting released 2 days early. I'm getting out on Wednesday. So the family's moving. They know they have an ICE hold, and that's why they reached out. And so we're all working together to try to help this community member. And then ICE calls and says, oh, the plane is not ready. So never mind, we're not going to pick them up on Wednesday. So her release date is now back to Friday, which is tomorrow. They have an attorney who has submitted a request for release to ICE. That ICE request went up to DC. We just found out a few hours ago that DC denied the request. And they informed them that They will be picked up tomorrow by ICE. They will be put on a plane to Colorado. Farther, this person has been incarcerated for over 23 years. And instead of getting to go home to their family, they are going to be re-imprisoned simply because they are an immigrant. How is that justice? The Board of Supervisors continues to misappropriate funds to support the sheriff, to support this type of behavior. This type of collusion continues to happen because they'll find a way. They will find a loophole like they have with SB 54. In any other circumstance, you don't get out early. This is Orange County, not LA. Right? At one point in LA, you were doing 10% of your time. If you got sentenced to a year in the county jail, you served like 20 something days. That's never happened in the history of Orange County. The only time they kick anyone out early is when they're overcrowded and pressured by the community or when COVID hit. So it's important to understand that we have rights as immigrants and we have to utilize what weapons we have, which is our voices and our numbers. Because if the community shows up in numbers, things will change. Like Jose said, there shouldn't be an empty chair tonight. So we invite you to invite people to come to these things, to go to the Truth Act Forum, to speak up and speak out against these injustices that are being served and directed to BIPOC community. We've seen what happens with our Black migrants and the difference of how we treat our Black migrants to our Ukrainian migrants, for example, right? But they're not going to do anything different if we don't do anything different. I'm getting a call from Adelanto probably right now. There's a Native American saying, right? That the wolf that you feed is the wolf that survives. Instead of feeding community with the funds, we are feeding public safety, the sheriff's department, the jails. We continue to criminalize the BIPOC community. What do they think is going to win if you keep investing money into jails and prisons versus investing money into community programs? The wolf you feed the most is the wolf that's going to win. And then they turn around and want to incriminate us. Immigrants are criminals. They're rapists and drug dealers and this and that. It's completely BS. Excuse my language. Right? So I invite y'all to continue to educate yourselves at forums like this. I think the people that put this together to be able to offer the community a space where they can come and learn. Because united, we win. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Luis, for your time. If we can go to the next slide. We are at the final stretch. We're going to hand it off to folks at the ACLU to talk about Voting Rights 101. Are you all ready to vote?
Woo!
Just keeping to
Hi, everyone. My name is Cynthia Valencia. I'm a policy advocate with the ACLU. And thank you all for sticking with us for so long. The whole reason we're here to talk about the Board of Supervisors and why we did a deep dive on all these different issue areas is because we have an election in 18 days. How many of you already received your ballot in the mail? Yes, I see lots of raised hands and see you in the chat also saying that you have received your ballot. And if you haven't, you still have time to register online or by mail. So let's just go over real quick about your voting rights. So luckily in California, it's pretty simple. You have the right to vote if you are a United States citizen and a resident of California. if you are 18 years or older on election day. So if you're 17 now, but by election day, which is November 8th, you turn 18, you can vote in this election. If you're not currently in state or federal prison for the conviction of a felony. So let me be clear about this. So if you have loved ones who are currently incarcerated, but it is not for a federal conviction, they can vote even while incarcerated. In jails, people can vote, even in Orange County. So if you have committed or if you have loved ones, or if you yourself have committed a felony and you have already served your sentence, you can vote. We do not have laws, and voters in California recently voted to make sure that people have restored rights to vote. So I just want to be clear about that. It's only for people who are in state or federal prison serving a felony conviction. And then the last one is if you're not currently found mentally incompetent to vote by a court. That is a more complicated thing that I'm more than happy to answer about, but in general, you have the right to vote if you are over the age of 18 and a United States citizen and a resident of California. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so registration. We have a lot of access to registration in California. Thankfully, you can register to vote online. The registration deadline online is October 24th if you want to receive a ballot in the mail. If you do not need to do that, you have until election day. So on November 8th, you can go in person, register to vote, and then that day you can vote. So that's really exciting, but that's an option that we have here in Orange County. But if you see October 24th as a deadline to register, that's only online or by mail. Also, you can register to vote if you are unhoused. So you do not need a permanent address. You do not need a physical address in order to vote. So you can put, people can put the cross streets that they spend the most time at in order to register to vote. And people who are unhoused, it's probably, or it will be easier for unhoused people to go to a vote center to vote in person if they do not have a mailing address. And I see a really quick question. Can you register day of at vote centers? Yes, any vote center in the county. If you live in Orange County, you can go to any single vote center in Orange County to vote and to register to vote. Another thing, you do not need a California's driver's license or identification to register or even to vote. If anyone asks you for your ID at a polling place, that is illegal and you should call us because they're not supposed to ask you that. Just a reminder that if you're 16 or 17 years old, you can pre-register to vote. So it's nice to just be ready to do that. Next slide. Okay, so luckily we have a lot of easy options to vote. So if you were already registered to vote, or if you registered to vote by October 24th, you have a ballot mailed to your mailing address. So the options that you have, the first one that you can do is fill out that ballot that you received. You can put it in the mail, which is a very safe and secure way to vote. You do not have to pay for postage as long as it is postmarked by election day, meaning if you drop it off at any post box or post office before the mail is collected on election day, your vote will be counted even if the county doesn't get it for 2 weeks afterwards. It still will be counted. You can drop it off at any ballot drop box or vote center in Orange County. And I highly recommend using ballot tracks to get text notifications about where your ballot is. So I got a text when my ballot was mailed to me. I received my ballot, and then when I return it, I'm going to get a text that the county received it, and then I'm going to get a text that it was counted. So I highly recommend that you do that. Next slide. Alrighty, and then the last one. So your other option to vote, if you misplaced your ballot, or if you like or prefer to vote in person, or if you have issues, or maybe you didn't get the ballot in the language that is easier for you to vote in, definitely recommend to go to a vote center, and you can go to anyone in the county, whether it's the one that's closest to your home, closest to your workplace, or closest to where you spend the most time. A lot of them are going to start opening October 29th, which is very soon. That's just in less than or in like about 10 days or so. And then So they're going to be open, not for the full amount of hours, but they're going to be open. And then all vote centers in the county will be open starting Saturday, November 5th. So go there to vote in person. You do not need to turn in your ballot. So if you've misplaced it or if it's damaged, you don't have to bring it with you to vote in person. You can still vote in person. You can drop off your mailed ballot if that's what you would prefer to do. You can do same day voter registration and then vote that same day. And you can get help from election workers in your language. So you should have resources in all the multiple languages that we have here in Orange County. So luckily we have these many options in Orange County. And at the ACLU, we're going to be doing some vote monitoring. So if you see anything that are any sort of issues, please contact us. We hope we don't encounter any issues with voter interference, but yeah, we're excited for the election and here to support the community in case there's any issues that arise.
This is the end.
So we are at 8:30. So we thank everyone for coming in person. We thank everyone for coming online and also helping us navigate some technical difficulties. This is our first hybrid time. So thank you all so much. And please do reach out to any of the organizations that were present today to stay engaged, especially as we advance beyond the election.
Great. Yeah. Thank you all so much. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to our audience. And thank you to the folks online. Thank you to our tech team. Woo! Go out and vote November 8th. Bye, everyone.